This is from Washington Post. Democracy dies in darkness. They're doing what they can to help. Bernie Sanders has emerged as the Donald Trump of the left. Well, what does that mean? I mean, what do they mean by that exactly? Do they mean that he has a movement surrounding him? I mean, I guess that is technically something they have in common. Do they mean that despite the establishment being against them, they're making strides anyway? They do have that in common. The GOP establishment didn't want Donald Trump to be the person, but he was. They threw everything they could at Donald Trump, but he won anyway. They do have that in common. Bernie Sanders is in that position because he actually has policies that would help people. Donald Trump's in that position because he's a liar and ran on this fake right-wing populist idea that is and was and still is a lie, but people bought it because they're desperate. So, but anyway, let's go to this article. I'm sure it's meant as an insult to Bernie Sanders, and of course it is. I've already skimmed some of it. Here we go. Bernie Sanders has emerged as the Donald Trump of the left. This is an opinion piece from Dana Milbank, who, by the way, has been defending this piece a bunch on Twitter. You wrote a great piece when right after you publish it, you spend your time having to defend, different parts about it. Actually, I guess in some cases that might mean you did write a great piece, but I'm going to go ahead and say this is not one of them. In politics, as in physics, every action has an equal and opposite reaction. Okay, hence Bernie Sanders emerged as the Donald Trump of the left. All right. Fundraising and polls show that many Democrats think the best answer to an angry old white guy with crazy hair, New York accent, and flair for demagoguery is, well, another angry old white guy with crazy hair, New York accent, and flair for demagoguery. So this is all just surface-oriented hijacking of identity politics. There is nothing of substance here. This paragraph has nothing of substance. The fact that a major outlet published this, if this was a humor piece or a satirical piece in The Onion, that'd be fine. If this was a comedic memoir, like if this was something like Al Franken used to do before he got into office and decided he knew more than the voters in his state did, and he was doing pretty cool books, actually. I liked some of his older books, and I liked a lot of his comedic work as well, actually. But if this was that, that's fine. But this is an actual opinion piece in a newspaper. And right now, the data supporting this claim that Bernie Sanders is the Donald Trump of the left is the observation that they are both white. They have crazy hair, according to this person. Which, I mean, let's look at Dana's hair. Let's, if you're going to criticize their appearance, let's look at... All right. Well, that's pretty subtle hair, in fairness. Dana has very reserved hair. So in fairness to you, Dana, that's very reserved hair. But, if somebody is a little more fluid in their hair, I don't know why you got to be Judgy McJudgerson. All right, so it's not difficult to picture a scenario in which Bernie Sanders captures the Democratic presidential nomination with the same formula that worked for Trump with Republicans in 2016. What is that? You mean appealing to people? Donald Trump appealed to people. It was a lie. They got duped. But he was a good liar. He still is a good liar. That's what Donald Trump made a career out of. I mean, what does that mean? Yeah, it's an outsider candidate during an outsider time. So by that, but this person just wants to throw an insult at Bernie Sanders. That's all this person's trying to do. That's all Dana's trying to do. Reserved hair Dana. It's a white guy with crazy hair and a New York accent. First of all, I don't really hear I guess I hear a little bit of a New York accent with Trump. More with Bernie, I'd say. But again, none of this matters. All right, so let's see if there's anything slightly less surface-oriented in this article. I doubt there is. But let's see. This is Get Your News On with Ron. We're exploring it all together. So here we go. On paper, the independent from Vermont doesn't make much sense. Why is that? Democrats are a party of youth. Actually, more young people are fleeing both parties. More young people are fleeing both parties and identifying as independents more so than ever before. That's I mean, that's just true. More young people are fleeing the two-party system, and they're going independent. So, but okay, the Democrats are a party of youth, and he's 77. Why aren't you pointing out the fact that Nancy Pelosi is the same age? She's the leader, so does she not make much sense either? They are majority female, and he's a man. Okay, well then why should no men at all be running? Why aren't you writing this same piece about Beto O'Rourke or Cory Booker? Or Joe Biden, by the way, who is also an old white guy. Why aren't you writing this piece about them? I guess because they're unpopular compared to Bernie Sanders. Why does Bernie Sanders have so many young people that support him? Why does Bernie Sanders have women and people of color who support him? Maybe it's more about policy. All right, but let's get back to this article. So far, everything has been about just surface-oriented things. Bernie's age, the fact that Bernie is a man, the fact that Bernie's an old white guy. That's all. Everything. It has taken this person about 3 paragraphs to say, Bernie's an old white guy. Bernie's an old white guy. Oh, from New York. I'm sorry, from New York. Bernie's an old white guy from New York. Hey, Democrats are young, which by the way, I'd like to see the receipts on that. More young people are fleeing the two-party system. And more young people are connecting with the Bernie Sanders. They're connecting with real ideas. All right, but let's get back to this stupid article. So far, this person said, but doesn't point this out about any of them. An NBC News poll this week found out that there are more voters with concerns about Sanders than there are for former Vice President Joe Biden. But he doesn't point out that Joe Biden's an old white guy. Senator Elizabeth Warren, Senator Kamala Harris, or former Representative Beto O'Rourke, also white guy. Doesn't point that out about them. Yet Sanders has both money and movement. Why does he have money? He doesn't take any corporate PAC money. His money are all from small contributors and individuals. Why does he have money? Could it be because people like him? Could it be because he's popular? All right, so now they're talking about the money that he raised. Meanwhile, Sanders himself remains untouchable in a Trumpian way. Claims of mistreatment by male staffers from women who worked on his 2016 campaign? Yawn. No, actually, he responded to that, and as a result, he said there will be no tolerance for that, and his staff has unionized, and it's actually, to my knowledge, the first presidential staff to do that, or nominees, or candidate staff to do that, and it received little press for doing so, and he encouraged it. So they have a union protecting them now. Does Amy Klobuchar's staff have that? Does Kamala Harris's? Does Beto O'Rourke's? They unionized. So no, they did respond to that. I guess that's a yawn to you though, Dana. I guess you're not a big fan of unions with that reserved hair of yours. All right. His resistance to releasing his tax returns, whatever. Whatever, because what are people going to see? He's been a public servant for over 30 years. What do you think you're going to see there? What are you going to see there, Dana? Why don't you say why you want to see them? Maybe because if you do, you're going to sound like just a conspiratorial smear merchant, which is essentially what you're being, but you're trying to be subtle about it because you have very reserved hair. All right. Sanders isn't Trump in the race-baiting, lender-cheating, fact-avoiding, porn actress-paying, Putin-loving sense, but their styles are similar. Their styles are similar. Shouting and unsmiling. What the hell does that mean? So they have passion when they speak. They actually speak with conviction. Trump speaks with conviction when he's demeaning other people and inflating himself. Bernie speaks with conviction when he talks about his ideas. He says, not me, us. And you know something about Bernie Sanders? He's far from perfect. There are real criticisms to be had about Bernie Sanders. He's not a perfect. There is no such thing as a perfect candidate. But this is not a valid criticism. It's a shame that we have a corporate media where one spends more time debunking non-valid, invalid criticisms of a politician than exploring valid criticisms of a politician. What is that saying about our corporate media, other than that it's corrupt beyond recognition and shouldn't even be legal? Because it shouldn't. Our media structure should not be legal. There should be laws protecting consumers from something like this from ever happening. And that's why when it comes to the press freedom ranking, we barely rank in the top 50. We're barely in the top 50. Land of the free, like, oh, well, it's better than the state getting involved, the media structure we have. Really? That's why we're barely in the top 50. And look at how whistleblowers are treated. Chelsea Manning, still in solitary confinement. Edward Snowden, Julian Assange. The way we treat whistleblowers, that shouts press freedom. It sure does. But let's clutch our pearls when a White House press secretary tells everybody to turn their cameras off, and they say, yes, ma'am. They say, of course we'll turn our cameras off because we want access, and we're spineless. All right, let's look at this dumb article. All right, so they both talk with conviction. That's and I guess they're the first two politicians ever in the history of politics to speak with conviction. Most politicians just are like, nah, that's how you get elected, right? You talk poorly. No, most politicians can speak well. Some can't. They typically lose. Hillary Clinton, every time she speaks, her numbers go down. Guess what she did? She lost to arguably the most beatable candidate in the history of American politics. The two most beatable candidates ran against each other in 2016. And we deserve better. 2016 should never have happened. No democratic experiment deserved two choices so utterly repulsive. Yet it was shoved down our throats. And the people who said we deserve better were shamed and ridiculed. And it might repeat itself for 2020. It might repeat itself. So, let's see. Anti-establishment and anti-media. Well, anti-establishment, all the anti-establishment candidates, that's what people want right now. You know who else is anti-establishment? The country. The country is sick of the Beltway. They're sick of politics as usual. They're sick of the duopoly. They're sick of it. This is an anti-establishment era. It's not unique to Trump or Bernie. It's unique to the populace. So by this logic, this anti-establishment logic, everybody is the Trump of whatever they are. Pretty much every voter. You're the Trump of the middle. You're the Trump of the right. You're the Trump of the left. You're the Trump of the Trump. You're the Trump. Trumpity Trump. Because it's an anti-establishment time, Dana. Despite what goes on in your corporate media circles, despite how many reserved haircuts you walk by in the Beltway, it's an anti-establishment time. That's the time we're living in. That's not unique to Bernie or Trump. All right, so what's this other thing? Anti-media, well, trust in the media is at an all-time low. It continues to decline. People are fleeing cable news like the Titanic. The media has failed miserably time and time again. People are sick of it. People want actual news. That's why some people watch a comedian stream on YouTube and get his news in real time. Because that's better than just going through the muck of the drivel that corporate media spews out on a daily basis. All right. Sanders supporters hope He'll fight Trump's fire with fire, refusing to be conciliatory the way Biden and O'Rourke are, or be goaded by Trump the way Warren was into taking a DNA test. Maybe answering belligerence with belligerence will work. Trump-era predictions are worthless. All right, I agree with this part. Trump-era predictions are worthless. I think that's a fair point. All right. Okay. So, cool. So far, this entire article could have been like 4 sentences. So far, this entire article could have been, hey, Bernie's an old white guy, and he's from New York, and I don't like his hair. So I don't think he's a good candidate because of all those things that don't matter. But he also speaks loudly. Trump does that too, so I guess they're the same. But it's tough to make predictions. That could have been this article so far, and what this writer did in 4 paragraphs. I spent Monday, so this is this is Dana talking. I spent Monday at a cattle call for 8 Democratic presidential candidates hosted by labor unions, the Sierra Club, Planned Parenthood, and other progressive groups. Sanders was easily the least charismatic, hoisting his trousers by the waist, tugging at his socks, hunching over the lectern, sitting stiffly and awkwardly greeting questioners. All physical. Every single thing. This is an ageist article, by the way. He's nitpicking at every physical thing Bernie Sanders did. Probably because he was watching Sanders the most intently because he wanted to write this smear piece. This is ageism. Oh, he hoisted his trousers. He doesn't have the greatest posture in the world. He's in his 70s. He's in his 70s and he maintains a schedule. By the way, I'm a comedian. I used to be a full-time road comic. I traveled 45 weeks a year. I don't know how Sanders keeps his fucking schedule. I don't know. And I'm a lot younger than 77. A lot younger. I don't know how Sanders keeps that freaking schedule. And I used to live in a car. And Sanders does that in his freaking 70s. All of his arguments for least charismatic. He doesn't mention what any of the candidates talk about, by the way. He just attacks the way Sanders' socks were, the way he hoisted his pants. Imagine if this same article was written about Amy Klobuchar or Kamala or even Beto O'Rourke. Imagine if it was written by them like, oh, she hoisted her blouse at some point. She bent over to fix a sock. What the hell's wrong with you? Like, what is wrong with you? This is ageism. That's all this is. This is just an ageist smear piece. And it's just a clickbaity headline. Oh, Bernie Sanders is the Trump of the left. Let's tune in for this mental gymnastics. Do you have a good relationship with your parents, Dana? Because I'd imagine they're probably around Bernie's age. How would you like it if somebody wrote this type of article about them? I recently lost my grandmother. She was 101 years old, had a hell of a run. She did some physically quirky things because of her age. Someone should write an article about that. And I'm not comparing Bernie to a 101-year-old. He's very far from it, but you see the point. Like, what makes you think this is insightful at all? I mean, this is just gross. He wrote a paragraph above that actually had a couple points that made sense. And then he completely just shattered it with the dumbest, just ageist cruelty. Like, that was just mean. Why are you looking at the guy's waistline so much, Dana? Why is that what you were paying attention to when you were at an event to hear a bunch of presidential candidates share their ideas? Maybe because only one of them actually has ideas, and it's the one you don't like. And actually, 2 of them have ideas, but one of them wasn't even invited to this event. The fact that the Washington Post published this is disgusting. And that's what you get when you have a paper owned by a real-life Lex Luthor, who is Jeff Bezos, who has deals with the CIA. Do you not look at this and think, the American people deserve better than this? You know when other people come to this country, they look around, they're like, you guys don't do news here. Like, you don't have it. And they're right. I used to say our media structure is toxic. Now I go a step further and I'm like, we don't have a media structure. Because we don't. We don't. We literally don't have one. So whenever someone says, there's a problem with the news media in the United States, you say, yeah, there's a big problem. We don't have one. We have a corporate giveaway. We just have a bunch of corporations posing as news agencies. That's what we have. We literally do not have a news structure. So, I mean, do we need to go further with this? This article sucks ass. But the reception among liberal activists, which has ranged from tepid, Kristen Gillibrand, to enthusiastic, was for Sanders rapturous. Why do you think that is, Dana? Why do you think that is? He simplified and blamed, the crisis that we are facing today is not complicated. We have a government that ignores the needs of the working people. He's right, yet works overtime for wealthy campaign contributors in the 1%. He's right. He mocked those who question his ideas, such as Medicare for All. How did he mock them? How did he mock them, Dana? You mean he disagreed with them? You mean he disagreed with them because his policy is Medicare for All? That's how he mocked them? Or he pointed out the truth that every study has indicated that Medicare for All is cheaper than what we currently do? Even one backed by the Koch brothers? I have a feeling that's what he said. Dana saw that as mocking. He channeled rage at the vulgarity of a grotesque and corrupt system, the absolute hypocrisy of Republicans, corporations that lie, and billionaires who buy elections. Why are all these in quotes, Dana? Here's the summary of this article. Dana is desperate to defend the status quo because Dana gets rich from it. So Dana wrote a very lazy smear piece article that is ageist and just dull at every angle. Bernie's an old white guy. Wow, Dana, you think you're the first to come up with that one? You think you're the first to observe that? His posture's not outstanding because he's in his 70s. Wow, Dana. Wow. And here's a couple quotes from what he actually said. I'm going to put in quotes. He said we cater to the billionaire class. He says stuff that he said time and time again, and he's right. And that's why people like him, Dana. That's why he got a big applause. Because people actually wanted to hear ideas. They weren't worried about his waistline or how good his posture was or wasn't. They wanted to hear ideas, Dana. That's why everybody else had a big response for him, except for you. Because you like the status quo the way it is. You want to pretend there's nothing wrong. Well, there is something wrong, and part of the reason it's as wrong as it is because of establishment shills like you. The fact that you would write this article and send it in and say, okay, I'm doing good work, is sad. That's sad. People call me a journalist. I don't consider myself one. I'm not a journalist. I have no desire to become one. But that sure as hell isn't much of a bar in the United States. And the sad part is, there are some fantastic journalists in this country. There are some fantastic journalists in the United States. You got to dig for them, but they're out there. And they don't work at places like the Washington Post typically. I mean, occasionally corporate media has some diamonds in the rough. I'm not going to say they don't, but you really got to dig for those diamonds. And what you hear more about it is garbage like this. And this piece is garbage. It is nothing short of complete garbage. Bernie's not a perfect candidate. There are real criticisms to be had about him. Tulsi's not a perfect candidate. There are real criticisms to be had about her. But all you're going to see in the corporate media are just straight up smear pieces, which is what this was. And they keep somehow getting worse. Because when you just rehash the same tired ideas, Bernie's an old white guy. He's from New York. Gee, that's not catching on. People still love him. Where do we got to go next? His posture's not great. He slouches a little bit. I saw him messing with his pants. I saw him fixing a sock. Did he clear his throat, Dana? Did he do that? Did he cough at any point, Dana? His hair's not reserved enough for you, Dana. Wow. You're doing a disservice to journalism, Dana. That's what you're doing. What a garbage smear piece. That might have been the worst one I've seen so far. And we've covered a lot of them already. That might have been the worst one I've seen so far. That's saying a lot. Get your news on with Ron. Don't you want to know what's going on? We're getting our news on today. Get your news on with Ron. Don't you want to know what's going on? We're getting our news on today. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You can tweet me an article at Ron Placone. We'll go through it together